Welcome back to Let's Talk Shop, where we focus on anything career and technical related. I'm your host, Dan Boone, and on today's episode, I am pleased to present Mrs. Carmella Anderson as my guest today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, to kick things off today, I'd like to just learn a little bit about Mrs. Anderson. What's your background, your ties to Del Castle? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I started, I'm an alumni from Del Castle. Actually, I graduated in 1990.
Okay.
And then I came back in 2001 as the track coach. I started teaching here in 2005.
Okay.
So I've always had ties to Del Castle, so my family worked here for years, and then I came back as well.
And when you first started teaching here, what were you teaching then?
So I was teaching a class called Career Skills. It was for 10th grade.
Okay.
And it was an academy class for all the 10th grade. It backed up driver's ed, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And so that was a class that I had all of the 10th graders teaching them about employability skills and things like that. Then I was a business tech teacher.
Okay.
And I taught business for, I think, about 4 years. And then I became a DFTA teacher. So now I teach all freshmen.
All right, so DFTA, let's dive into that a little bit more. It ties in really nicely to the mini-series that we're running through Let's Talk Shop, and that is we're giving the full Del Castle experience. So what we're doing is exploring a student in 8th grade that is interested in attending Del Castle in the future. They go through their application process, they're admitted to Del Castle. What do things look like from there? So from freshman year all the way up until they graduate 4 years later, we want to showcase what that Del Castle experience looks like. And obviously DFTA is a huge part of that. So if you can dive a little bit deeper into what does DFTA stand for, what does it encompass, what kinds of things do students go through while they're in there, I'd appreciate that.
Awesome. So DFTA stands for Del Castle Freshman Transition Academy.
Okay.
We are the vocational piece for 9th grade. When a student enters Del Castle, they are not into a career area. Mm-hmm. So DFTA is that big piece. We help them make informative decisions on what career area to choose. The beauty of Del Castle is that we allow our students to choose where they want to go. Mm-hmm. So we have 24 career areas, and we tour all of the 24. And then they decide what 4 they want to visit. So in DFTA, we allow them to choose, and then we also teach them basically how to be a Del Castle student and then how to make that transition from middle school to high school. We teach different topics such as resume writing, interviewing skills. We teach financial literacy. We teach reading literacy awareness. We also teach community service. That is our big push this year. We started last year, but we take our students out to different establishments and help them give back to the community. So we create a well-rounded student.
Okay. So what are some different projects or activities that might be taking place in your classroom or in any of the DFTA classrooms that a freshman would be going through?
So in my class, I teach my students how to write a resume and how to interview. So we focus a lot on making connections with people. So I teach my students how to communicate because, nowadays they're texting a lot. So we learn the art of communication. So, it's hard for them sometimes. They have to step outside their comfort zone. But we do the mock interviews. They have to dress for the interview because, where can you go now and not interview for a job?
Sure. No, that's great. My role here, my full-time role is the co-op coordinator. So, those workforce development attributes and that we try to instill in our students go a long way senior year when they get to me and we're lining them up for interviews and things. We just had some students come interview for our main office co-op positions. And we had some students showed up and they did a great job, dressed appropriately, had resumes printed, very prepared, had questions for the end. We had other students that showed up wearing, jeans and a hoodie and not that professional appearance that we're looking for. That resume is key. It's your first impression. An employer may look at 15 resumes and you could be the top student in your class and your shop teacher knows that, all of your teachers know that, you know that, your parents know that, your friends know that, but this employer who's never met you before doesn't know that. The only thing they know about you is what they see on this piece of paper, this resume. So a student who has a really basic, plain resume, didn't put a lot of effort into that, that's the impression that the employer is going to gain of them as well, that, hey, you didn't put much effort into this, you're probably not going to put much effort into anything you do for me either. So I think that those resumes are key. Interviews, very easy to sit here and say, well, I'm just going to talk about myself. I can answer questions, no big deal.
Right.
But when it's one-on-one and that pressure's on, your mind can freeze up very quickly. So I think those are great skills. What are some other skills in some of the other areas? I know that you have a number of DFTA teachers that they may be working on their life skills and things of that sort.
Right. So we also teach business ethics,
Okay.
what to do and what not to do in the workplace to make sure that you stay employed. And that's important because nowadays students are on their phones a lot and they don't understand that being on your phone could cost you your job.
Yeah.
So they learn about different scenarios, they'll go through different scenarios and learn what to do and what not to do. And we also teach financial literacy, how to create a budget. You know, you want to move out your parents' house when you turn 18, maybe. So how are you going to live once you leave? Some kids think, okay, well, I can make $50,000 and I can, you know, still stay at home. That's good. You know, that's really good. But when you're going into the real world, where can you go and how can you manage and sustain your lifestyle?
Yeah.
So we teach budgeting also.
Okay. Yeah, all great things. You know, funny story, I had I was running boot camp to work. This was 2 years ago, and we had a class in there, and we were talking about voicemails and all that. And you had a student who went out and interviewed and said, I never got a call back. I never heard anything from them. I called the employer, and the employer goes, I tried calling, nobody answered, and then the voicemail was full. The student said, well, I don't even know what my voicemail is. I said, what do you mean? Open your phone up. They had an iPhone. They go to it, and they started kind of going through, and they had all these voicemails in there. From 2 years before that, had a voicemail from his mom that said, hey, give me a call. I'm trying to get a hold of you, and had no idea. So, you know, making sure simple things like that, you know, students just don't have to deal with. Because like you said, our communication streams up until we hit the workplace are very different.
Absolutely.
It's short and what I need here and now, and text message and quick, easy communications. But that's not the way the business world works.
Absolutely.
So all great skills. So where do things go after DFTA? So they work through these rotations, they're gaining these different skills. How does that lead into whatever career area they might be interested in later on?
So in the third marking period, right before spring break, the students will already have chosen their number one choice.
Okay.
So they'll get a letter stating, congratulations, you got into your first choice. If they don't get into their first choice, they have 4 choices. So it depends, excuse me, depends on how, because we have a number system and we have a rubric that we go by. And it depends on how well they do in all of their choices that they visit. And then they'll be placed into a career area of one of their choosing. After that 4th marking period, they'll go into their career choice and they'll spend 4.5 weeks in there with that student, with the career area teacher.
Okay.
And they're in there with the upperclassmen and they're working on projects. And then after that, their next 4.5 weeks, they're back in DFTA working on a freshman project.
And then that wraps up their freshman year.
That wraps up their freshman year.
And then at the start of sophomore year, they'll be full-time. They're finished with DFTA, and they're now full-time in their career area with the rest of their sophomore class. Great. Well, I think that brings us to a good point where we can wrap things up with DFTA. And I'd like to close things out with a 3-2-1. So if you could give me 3 of the most important skills that you think students learn through DFTA, and then maybe 2 of your favorite things you think students get to do through. So 3 of the most important skills and 2 of your favorite activities that you get to work with students on.
So put me on the spot here.
I know. It's what I do.
3 of the most important skills. I think 1 would have to be their employability skills.
Okay.
They learn skills of how to be employed, the soft skills, what employers are looking for. That's number 1. Number 2, I think, would be for me, would be the interviewing.
Okay.
Because that's an important piece. And it's also deals with communication, how to communicate effectively in the workplace. I think the 3rd skill would probably have to be that community service piece. That's really big, thinking of other people and how, you are, you can go farther in life when you think of other people and you help other people.
Okay. And what are 2 of your favorite activities that you run in your classroom, or 2 of the favorite projects or assignments, or what you look forward to with students?
So I do something in my class called speed networking. So it's kind of like speed dating. Well, we're not hooking up anyone. They're learning how to have a conversation with someone. So I give them some conversation starters, and they're, introducing themselves, talking about their career area, and things about themselves. And they learn about their classmates, because soon some of these classmates will be their career area mates. You know what I mean? They'll go into their same shop. So they're learning how to have a conversation. So that's my number one. I also like the interviewing, because I get to learn about my quiet students. They shine during the interview because it's just them. They don't have to compete with anyone, to get the attention. And they really master the art of interviewing. So I love that.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to come down in your classroom and watch some of those mock interviews take place, and it's really cool. Students are on the spot a little bit, right up in front of the whole class and interviewing with you, and they get done and the whole class gives them feedback.
Absolutely.
But what I love is it's both positive and ways that they can improve as well. So really beneficial aspect. And the last thing I'd like you to give us is, I'm a freshman. I'm going through DFTA in my freshman year and trying to navigate entry into high school here at Del Castle. What's one piece of advice that you can give me to be successful while I'm here that's going to lead me into getting my number one shop of choice?
So I would tell all freshmen, and I tell all of my freshmen, that in order to get into your first choice shop, we have a lot of acronyms at Del Castle, and we have something called BAG, your behavior, attendance, and grades. And I always say you don't want a knockoff bag, you want a designer bag. So you want to make sure your behavior is good. You want to make sure you have great attendance and your grades are really good, because that is what's going to help you get into your first choice shop. And then when you go into these choices that you've selected, the 4, you have to make sure, even if you may not want that shop, you have to fake it until you make it, right? So make sure that career area teacher knows this student wants me. And you may not want that career area, but you have to go in there giving 100% all the time. And then you can get into your first choice shop. All
right. You heard it here. Great advice from Ms. Carmella Anderson on how to be successful here during your freshman year as you navigate through DFTA or shop rotations. I'd like to thank you for coming in and joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And we look forward to joining all of you on our next episode of Let's Talk Shop.